Hi, this is Dayna Linton for Novels Alive TV, and today I have Diana Gabaldon today.
Very good.
And I say your name wrong, but at the panel, you said how it was pronounced, and so I've been practicing.
You did very well.
I would do it right. I have to tell you that I've interviewed a lot of people, and it is just such a thrill to interview you because I love your books.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
The whole Claire and Jamie love affair is just beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you.
So it's the Outlander series that you do.
It is, yes.
And you're on your 7th book, or the
Oh.
8th one's coming out, correct?
Well, it's more complicated than that.
Okay.
There are the Outlander novels, which
Right.
began, of course, with Outlander. The most recent of those is Echo in the Bone, which is the 7th of that ilk. But there are also 3 books in the Lord John Grey series. The Lord John is, in fact, part of the Outlander story, and those books sort of fit sideways into the Outlander series. They are part of it. And so the entire thing is sort of a bigger and messier arrangement than you might otherwise think. There's also small short stories here and there that will be published in anthologies that kind of fill in holes for minor characters and therefore are part of the series as well.
I'm excited to read them all. I told you I have the last book, but I haven't had an opportunity to read it yet. I'm excited. I mean, usually I get it, and I'm reading it, and I just didn't have a chance to this time. And then you've got a new one. Talk about The Exile.
Yes. Well, The Exile is a brand new book. It will be out September 21st, in about 2 weeks here, and it is a graphic novel. It's
new for you.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I used to write Walt Disney comic books back in the 1970s. I did indeed.
Oh, wow.
And as a result, I enjoyed the form very much. So when graphic novels began to enter the mainstream a few years ago, I said to my agent, you know, if anyone ever wants me to write a graphic novel, I would be thrilled. And sure enough, very shortly thereafter, Valentine Books came along and said, would you like to write a graphic novel? I said, I'd love to.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, what the editor said to me was, I want a new Jamie and Claire story, but I want it kind of set within the parameters of Outlander. I said, well, that's interesting. Let me think about that. Outlander is called that because it is told completely from the point of view of the female protagonist, who is an Outlander. She's a British World War II nurse who disappears back in time to 1743, where she is a complete fish out of water. She does not speak the language of the Highlands. She doesn't know the clan politics, has no idea of the times of the 18th century, and consequently, there are a great many things that she doesn't know, isn't aware of, or is deliberately kept ignorant of. So there's a lot of the story she doesn't know. And I said, what if I told that story from the point of view of someone who knew everything, or at least knew everything she doesn't know?
Oh, and that's what this is?
That's what this is.
Oh, must pick this up. This is really exciting.
Yeah, they subtitle it as Experience Jamie's Side of the Story. But the thing is, it's told not only from Jamie's point of view, but also from that of his godfather, Murtaugh.
Okay.
And the thing about a graphic novel that you can do that you can't do easily in text is to change viewpoint just like that, because you can see instantly who's talking. In fact, you can have 3 viewpoints in the same panel if you want to, which is completely impossible with a text novel. So that's one of the nice things you can do.
Obviously, you've got an illustrator too, so did you
Yes.
want to plug that you're illustrator as
Oh,
well?
absolutely, I certainly do. His name is Hoang Nguyen, Hoangnguyuyen, and he's a very well-known illustrator. He does a lot of video game work and has done RoboCop movies and all kinds of very cool stuff. He is wonderful. I chose him out of a large pile of artistic samples because of his beautiful color sense and his composition, but more especially because of the way he does faces. He does beautifully expressive faces,
Very nice.
which is very unusual in graphic novels. I mean, normally a graphic novel character is either deadpan or I'm saying, well, this will just not do for the story. You know, the people here are very expressive. And given that the imagery is carrying so much of the story, that was very important. And I said, so I'd like this guy to do it. Also, he has a wonderful touch with women. My husband was looking at some of the early sketches and color work that came in, and he said, well, at least you know your illustrator is a heterosexual.
Oh, he does women well?
He does women well.
Wait, maybe that didn't come out right.
Yeah. Well, there were parts in this where the editor and I had to say, look, can you kind of tone down the boobage a little bit?
Okay, well, there you go. There you go. And in the panel the other day, I did not realize that you were or are a scientist.
Used to be, yeah.
Okay, and you said you were one of 6 in the world
Who did what I did.
to do what you did.
Well, I have assorted degrees. I have a PhD in quantitative behavioral ecology, which is just animal behavior with statistics. My PhD thesis was nest site selection in the pinyon jay, Gymnorhinus cyanocephalus, or as my husband says, why birds build nests where they do and who cares anyway. But I had sort of slid sideways, as various academics do, and ended up as an expert in scientific computation. This was the early 80s, and like I say, there were only 6 people in the world who knew what scientific computation was, let alone did it.
That is just amazing, and I know when I read your books, your knowledge of herbs.
Oh. Well, that's just
really
research, you know. You can look anything up.
Well, I didn't know if you already knew that, or if that was something, you know, you're bringing that to the book because you already knew that, or
No,
if it was something that you have been researching.
Oh, yeah. Well, I decided to write historical novels in the first place because I was a university professor. I knew my way around a library. I said it seems easier to look things up than to make them up, and if I turn out to have no imagination, I can steal things from the historical record, which works pretty well. And so that's why I decided to write a historical novel. So I was looking for a time and place in which to set this, because I've got no background in history, just the 6 hours of Western civilization they make you take as an undergrad. And so one time would do as well as another. Well, I was watching TV one day and saw a really old Doctor Who rerun. And this was one of the old Patrick Troughton episodes in which the Doctor had picked up a young Scotsman from 1745. So it's a 17, 18-year-old young man who appeared in his kilt. I said, well, that's kind of fetching.
Oh, yes.
And I found myself still thinking about this the next day in church. And I said, well, you write a book. It doesn't matter where you said it. The important thing is pick a point and get started. So I said, fine, Scotland, 18th century, knowing nothing about Scotland or the 18th century, having no plot, no outline, no characters, nothing but the rather vague images conjured up by the notion of a man in a kilt, which is, of course, very powerful and compelling image.
Yes, it is. I must say it is.
Well, that's where I began. Now, Doctor Who notwithstanding, it was a perfectly straightforward historical novel up till about the 3rd day of writing. At this point, I had been doing research on Scotland and so forth, and had more or less picked the Jacobite rising of 1745 as a good background, because all I knew about writing novels was that they should have conflict. And I said, well, that looks like a lot of conflict. We'll do that.
Yeah.
And I said, now, putting aside the political complexities, we have English versus Scots. Obviously, I must have a lot of Scotsmen because of the kilt factor. But I think it would be good if I had a female character to play off these guys, and we'll have sexual tension. That's good. That's conflict. I said, so if I make her an English woman, we will have lots of conflict.
Oh, yeah.
So about the 3rd day, I inserted this English woman. Had no idea who she was, what she was doing, or how she got into the book. But I loosed her into a cottage full of Scotsmen to see what she'd do. Well, she walked in, and they were all crouched around the hearth muttering, and they turned around and stared at her. And I'm thinking, why does she look funny? What's going on? Anyway, one of them stood up slowly, and he said, my name's Dougal Mackenzie, and who might you be? And without my stopping to think, I just typed, my name's Claire Elizabeth Beecham, and who the hell are you? And I said, well, you don't sound at all like a historical person. So I fought with her for several pages, trying to beat her into shape and make her talk like an 18th century woman, but she wasn't having any of this. She just kept making smart-ass modern remarks. She also took over and started telling the story herself. And I said, well, I'm going to fight with you all the way through this book. I said, no one's ever going to see this. It doesn't matter what bizarre thing I do. I said, go ahead and be modern. I'll figure out how you got there later. So it's all her fault that there's time travel in these books.
But I think it's brilliant. I think that's what's so compelling, at least for me. I love history, but I sure wouldn't want to give up what we've fought so many generations and hundreds of years for. But
Sure.
I love that aspect of it, that she's got all this knowledge of the future, but she's stuck in an age where women were accused of being witches if they did certain things. And I just love the way you write the story, and the love story between the two is just absolutely beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And, I talked to you yesterday about, you signed a book for our charity.
Sure.
And I did ask the person who won it how much that it went for, and it went for $500. She says,
Oh,
I was
really?
prepared to go $1,200.
Ooh.
Yes, and
Well,
she
I'm
wanted
very
you to
impressed.
know that. So it's for Gals Charitable Foundation, and
Yeah.
it went to help Women's and Children's Shelter
Oh,
at
perfect.
the Shade Tree Shelter in Las Vegas.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that.
And so $500, that's
That's
pretty awesome. And she told me yesterday that she has a light shining on it. It is a halo light.
Yeah.
Because she says she sees it and she goes, ah. And that's what she thinks about your books.
Oh,
And
well,
so
I'm
she
really
is
thrilled to hear
really,
that.
really excited. And so, a lot of the people that I know are Jared Butler fans. And I bet you get inundated with people who think that he should be Jamie.
I get all kinds of suggestions from everybody about everything.
He's not a redhead, so that kind of, but there is dye. There's something called dye that would work.
Well, the problem there is that while Mr. Butler is a very fine-looking man and no doubt a good actor, he
And
is also
Scottish.
Yes, but he's also about 40. I can't see
Yes.
him passing as a 22-year-old virgin.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work.
No, I don't.
No
Well,
amount of
people-
makeup can change that.
Well, people ask me all the time, who would you cast to play Jamie? And normally what I say is, look, I've never seen anybody who actually looks like Jamie, but that's not important. Because, an actor is an artist, just like a novelist or a sculptor or a
exactly.
painter, and their art is to embody somebody that they aren't. I've
Mhm.
seen actors, pull off just amazing transformations because they can act, I mean, there are people who can't act and they just, are photogenic, like Raymond Burr. He was Perry Mason no matter what he was in.
Exactly.
And, Mel Gibson is Mel Gibson regardless. He just looks older and scruffier in every movie, but he's still Mel Gibson. And so I said, you just have to see whether this person could act like Jamie Fraser, and how would you know that unless you saw him do it? Well, I was in Edinburgh a year ago, and a nice Scotsman came to talk to me named Mike Gibb, who said, I'm a lyricist and playwright, and my friend who's a composer and I have fallen madly in love with your Outlander book. We want to make a musical out of it. And the long and the short of it is that they did. I get information. And it's a song cycle, which is on a CD at the moment. It just came out at the end of July. It's already sold over 1,500 copies, which is not bad for
amazing.
essentially homegrown CD, etc.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with the idea of an eventual stage production in mind, they had got a young Scottish actor from Edinburgh who is 6'4" with red hair to
saw the
sing Jamie
picture.
Fraser.
Yeah.
Yes, and I had the privilege of seeing this young man act in Edinburgh in a play in the Fringe Festival. He can actually act,
That's
and
a plus.
And I've seen video of him doing Jamie Fraser as in the launch of the musical songs and so forth. So at the moment, he'd be my choice. His name's Alan Scott Douglas.
Oh, wow. And so now I know that your books have been optioned. They've been optioned for
Yes.
a while. Is there any progress on that? Because
Well,
I
think that
know
there may be, yeah.
Okay.
It's hard to tell, in
definitely.
terms of film stuff. But the option actually expired about 6 months ago, and I was perfectly willing to renew it, but we needed to have exclusionary language that would allow us to do this musical thing, because film option contracts always take all the dramatic rights. And I said, well, it doesn't specifically say we can't do a song cycle, which was what we were doing, but it does say, they want all the stage rights.
Sure.
And if we want to expand this into a full-scale stage production, which we do, then we need language saying that. And so their lawyer and my agent, did it out for 4 or 5 months, and he finally got the language that we needed. So that contract is ready to be signed as soon as I get back home. But they also asked for another contract that would allow them to explore the possibility of doing a miniseries. Well, I'm totally in favor of that. That's good because it's a big book. They have
it's
more
very
room.
good.
That's fine by me. But again, that's completely different terms and so forth. So this means another fight between lawyer and agent and so forth. I'm sure we'll get there in the end, but it'll be a little while before that comes through. Well, meanwhile, I have talked to the guy behind the production company and so forth. He tells me that he has narrowed down the choice of new scriptwriter. He decided he didn't like the first script and threw that and the scriptwriter overboard, which is good because I hated it myself.
But that is good.
Yeah. But he says that he has been interviewing scriptwriters and he has narrowed it down to 2, and thinks that he'll probably have chosen one within the next week or so, which will be interesting. Yeah.
Great.
So I'm having lunch with him later this month on my book tour, and I'll see what the news is then. So.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it finally being on film. And I mean, I think there's when you take an adaptation of a novel to film, obviously there's going to be creative.
Oh, it'll be different.
It'll be different.
But it'll be interesting. Yeah.
It will be very interesting. And sometimes it's not necessarily that it's better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah, I was actually astonished listening to the CD and seeing the video of the live launch, which is just songs, not even the whole play. Just how riveting it was. And my husband was likewise riveted, as has everybody else been who's listened to this. And he said, it's really astonishing. It's sort of as though Jamie and Claire are beginning to embody themselves. They're actually taking on existence outside your books. And I said, well, it's true. It is a little eerie, but it's really fun to watch.
And it would be really fun to see your characters come to life on film. I just
Assuming
think
it was well done. It could be
Well,
horrible,
of course.
but
yeah, that's a given. Now, where do you purchase the CD for the music, if that's where you want it?
Let's see. You can get it online if you just Google Outlander the musical. The website for it will pop right up.
Oh, excellent. And your website is?
Oh, mine is www.dianagabaldon.com. It's very simple.
I think people can remember that. And thank you so much. You've been so gracious, and
That's
your
my
clothes
pleasure.
are so beautiful. I
thank you.
absolutely covet your clothing.
No, thanks very much.
So, thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it. My pleasure.
Is du kraftig mogelijk, is leid om of ik am genießen.